Hey, Metal Dave here, along with Jason McMaster, my co-host, and welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, Jason and I are going to take a long walk back down memory lane to a time when we were much younger than we are today and revisit some of our first concerts. And I know that's a topic that a lot of you can relate to out there. Who can forget the sights, the sounds, the volume, the excitement, the thrill of being in an arena and witnessing your first rock concert when you were a teenager? We're going to get to all that. You're going to find out who I saw, who Jason saw.
Don't forget the smell.
Yeah, the smell. I think I threw in the smell. If I didn't, I'm sorry. You can't
That's
forget
okay.
the smell. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, the smell is a large part of those first concerts, right?
Yep.
And hey, let's face it, concerts are still a thrill for both of us, and I'm sure all of our listeners out there as well. We're sadly deprived of them right now in the age of pandemic, but we'll get back there eventually. Anyway, we're going to revisit some of our first concerts today. We'll get to all that in just a minute. But first, Jason, what's going on with you this week? What's on your radar?
Oh, lots of stuff. It's cold in Texas at the moment,
Very.
and that's rare. It's a cold snap that happens every 2 or 3 years,
2 or 3 centuries.
yeah, so I'm dealing with that, and so far so good. I have we have thin blood down here, so
Got that right.
yeah. Um, I have something I want to talk about that I've been recently gifted.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's always good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
My oldest friend in Austin, Texas, Mr. Michael Solis,
Militia Mike.
sings for an early '80s thrash band from Austin called Militia.
Yes.
And not, I could almost do a whole show on Militia, but
Yeah.
there's all kinds of side stories and things like that. But they were formed in 1984. Played tons of shows between here in San Antonio, Houston, Dallas. And in fairly recent years, went over to do some of the German festivals and stuff. But this is a new record by Militia,
Oh.
a band that barely, made records. If I get this too close to my camera, it's going to blur out. So you're going to see the album cover anyway. It's on red vinyl. This is called "And the Gods Made War." It's on
Awesome.
it's on Skull Records, which is what do they call this? HR Records, High Roller. That's what I was searching for. And so they got themselves a little German deal, and I'm jealous. It's awesome. But they recorded this. They actually recorded the songs from this in 2011.
Oh, wow.
And then one of the original guitarists, the original band, Mike Solis actually ended up playing drums on this record because Phil Shea had to go back to Alabama. He had come down for like a few weeks or 6 weeks or something to make the record with him, and then he had to split. I don't know if it was an emergency or whatever, but so Mike, the singer, ended up doing all the drums too, and he's a great drummer as well as a great heavy metal singer. So, it sounds amazing. This is the backstory is this: they recorded it in 2011 in like Mike's bedroom on like a PC, with just recording software and whatever mics they could find. And the songs are great. They gave me a burned CD of it, and they didn't say, Jason, tell me what you think, they knew I was going to anyway. So I told them what I thought. I said, well, I hope this is just rough mixes. And they go, nope, that's mixed. And I'm like, uh-oh, because it still just sounds like a demo, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the thing with a lot of like, sort of like underground thrash bands is getting that money sound. You can do it these days, but you got to spend a little bit of money, just a little bit of money,
Yeah.
which these guys didn't have. I tried to help them, tried to get them into Stewart, you know, from Igniter's place to at least record the drums and yada yada. Fast forward. So in 2016, unfortunately, original guitar player Jesse Villegas passed away. So
Right.
he didn't see this. He's on this, but he didn't see this light. And that's
Oh,
very, very, very unfortunate because it's not really, doesn't really sound like Militia when he's not playing guitar. And they tried that in the late 80s and it didn't work. This sounds amazing now. This is Bart Gabriel, who owns the label, mastered the record, and this was remixed and basically reamped, where you take all of the signal on every drum played, every vocal track, every guitar track, and run it through like you know, a plug-in, or you run it through one hose and it comes out the other sounding badass. You know what I mean? They just
yeah.
everything on the record, and it doesn't sound like demos anymore. It doesn't sound like it's recorded in a garage or in the bathroom or something. It sounds kick ass. And
Awesome.
it's amazing what you can do as long as you have good signals. And it's just the magic of technology, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The lyrics are in here. It's on red vinyl. Militia and the Gods Made War. This is what I'm listening to right now. I'm so proud to have this, and it's, you know, it's just cool because those guys, as well as Watchtower, arguably someone can, you know, smack me down if I'm wrong, single-handedly created the metal scene in Austin, Texas. Mic drop.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. And we should also note that Mike Solis, much like yourself, is one of those guys whose voice has just held up incredibly well over the years.
He's badass.
Yeah, still one hell of a singer after all these years, and especially considering his singing style.
We both started at the same time. You know, he's my oldest friend. We met in high school, and neither of us were singers when we met. So our teeth cutting on the mic was in an AMC Hornet with a jam box between our legs, like screaming to the top of our lungs to Anthrax and Raven.
Yeah, good times.
That'll train you.
Right. So one more time, what's the title on the new Militia album?
And the Gods Made War.
And the Gods Made War, brand new from Militia.
Yeah, and it's freaking awesome. You may have to buy it. You'll have to buy it online, but just look for it. I saw the links for it today. But it's the original band.
That's awesome.
The most incredible thing. It's like they went away, and 25 years later they made a record.
Yeah,
you know? That's just crazy, right? But
yeah.
Hey, mate, we're getting the band back together. You know, it's that kind of a thing. We're number one in a country I've never heard of before. You know, that kind of thing.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations to Mike Solis and Militia. That's great that they've got a new album out all these years later. Speaking of delving into the past a little bit, I was driving around the other day with my son. I was taking him to soccer practice, and we were digging through the CDs, looking for something to listen to, and I came across the Scorpions' Tokyo Tapes live album.
God.
Yeah, and
yeah,
that kind of says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, our live albums episode, we could have. I could have talked about that one for a half hour.
Yeah, that's what I thought. As soon as we popped it in, I was like thinking to myself, wow, we just did an episode on live albums and we didn't include that one. I need to say, though, that we're never going to be able to include everything worth mentioning on a given episode. There's just too many great players, too many great bands,
I
et
think that we're
cetera.
getting pretty good at. I think that we're getting pretty good at adding disclaimers like that in the Talk Louder history books. Right?
Yeah, well,
Point.
it's out of necessity more than neglect. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
But definitely, Scorpions Tokyo Tapes is definitely a live album worth checking out. I hadn't heard it in a long time, so it was great to hear it. I mean, arguably the band at their peak. I don't
Oh yeah.
know,
I think it's the last thing they did with Uli John Roth.
yeah, I think you're right, and of course the set list on that is spectacular. Um, Robot Man, Speedy's Coming, Pictured Life, Suspender Love. I mean, it's just great, and so we got a kick out of listening to it because we were listening a couple weeks ago to the Blackout album, and my son had never really heard Scorpions much before, but he loved the Blackout album. And I thought, well, this is great. This is going to be like a history lesson. So now I'm going to take you back to the band and the sound that they had kind of before they went a little more mainstream. So we got to dig into Tokyo Tapes, and I got to turn them on to Uli John Roth, who, of course, is by all rights a fantastic guitar player. So
He's a ripper. Yeah.
yeah. So we
He was
revisited
Yngwie
Tokyo
before
Tapes.
Yngwie.
Yeah,
He's the shredder before Yngwie.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Michael Schenker, of course, was in the Scorpions, but then Uli John Roth, not a bad replacement.
Well, it's a different thing. He's coming from a little bit of a different aspect of playing. It's very Jimi Hendrix fueled.
Yeah, but he's very busy, but very tasteful.
Yeah, he's more neoclassical, like
yeah, exactly.
like Yngwie is.
He's got that shredder kind of ability, but he doesn't play shredder like, if that makes any sense.
He's very, very tasty.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us right into our next segment, oddly enough. And today we are going back in time to revisit our first few concerts. Jason and I were going to see what we can recall, see how well memory serves us. So why don't you kick it off, Jason? What's your very first concert that you remember going to?
I was I want to say 12. I might have been 13. 1977. Corpus Christi Coliseum, South Texas. I believe I got dropped off by my parents, and then part of my brain thinks I walked there with some chums from school. And I just don't remember. I don't remember walking home, so I think it was the first. It was UFO opening for Rush.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, nice.
And I'm sure the ticket cost like, $7.
$8.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was obsessed with rock music, and I was obsessed with Kiss. And this was, I remember being so excited and like nervous because it was my first concert. I was not an adult. I didn't know, my head from my arse,
You're still not an adult, are you?
Right, exactly. But the point, is a huge deal to what I was about to experience, and the sights and sounds and smells were going to warp me forever, obviously. UFO was supporting Obsession, and that might be UFO's peak with Michael Schenker.
Wow.
And Rush was supporting. Rush had just toured in '76. They had toured 2112, and they were playing material from Farewell to Kings.
Oh, wow.
Which that's 77, through 78.
Yeah.
And I remember my seats were a little, because it wasn't general admission. I'm pretty sure I had seats, or maybe I was a little fearful, and I don't remember getting close to the floor at all.
Yeah.
So I was up a little high, and I always thought, man, that'd be cool if we were closer, but just felt it was a privilege to be there, kind of a thing is how I felt.
Sure.
Like
yeah.
I'm in someone else's house right now. I've never felt like when I'm a ticket holder that I'm owed anything. Does that make sense? Because it's a lot of concert goers feel like they can throw things and be wherever they want. They feel like they're entitled if they bought a ticket.
Yeah.
That's not really how it works in
Yeah.
my eyes. And I remember that. I'm respectful to the venue and to the bands more than anything.
Yeah. You just feel honored to be there.
Yes. This was like going to church for me. I didn't know it was going to feel like going to church for me.
Yeah.
I remember shedding tears in a couple of different times, probably more during Rush. I got emotional, literally got emotional. And they were playing it's my first concert, I'll remind you, and they're playing songs that I had heard 100 times or more on vinyl at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm seeing this live, and it's like, well, these are the cats that wrote and recorded, and now they're doing it in front of my brain.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, hey, this is cool. I didn't take it very lightly at all.
Yeah.
It was it charged me. Yeah, it moved me. I had been levitated somehow. And I feel like that in that moment, it was kind of something that I knew that I wanted to know how they did it, because I felt like it was magical. Like they were, magicians and wizards, and, something weird was happening,
Yeah.
And, that was an important moment to me. And I'm glad that I got to see these legends, some that are not with us anymore. Pete Way, Neil Peart.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Rush and UFO in 1977. Awesome. That's amazing.
It's like Dazed and Confused. It should have been a scene in Dazed and Confused. Or if it maybe it just ended up on the cutting room floor. Shame on them.
Yeah. Well, that's a good one. If that was your first one, and yeah, especially for $8, not a bad.
Yeah, or
first.
less, $7.50. Yeah.
Yeah. My first concert wasn't until 1983, I believe it was. I was a late bloomer when it came to concerts. My parents weren't very fond of the idea of me going to concerts. So finally, about the age of 16, I guess, they finally relented and said I could go to a concert if I paid for it with my own money. So I was mowing lawns and doing, odd chores, trying to raise all of $12.75.
Did they think they were making it hard for you?
I think they just wanted me to respect the idea that if you want something, you have to earn it. And as an adult now, I get that,
Yeah, of course.
So Um, so it's 1983. I'm going to my first concert, and it's Kiss on the Creatures of the Night tour.
Oh my God.
So, like you, I had grown up a total Kiss fanatic all through my childhood, and had been wanting to see them forever and ever and ever. Never had the chance. Finally, get the chance to see them on the Creatures of the Night tour.
Still had makeup on.
Still had
You're
makeup.
blessed. You're
They
blessed.
were promoting a great album, in my opinion, Creatures of the Night.
Yeah.
The one downside is they didn't have Ace and Peter. They had Vinnie Vincent and Eric Carr, who were great players. Don't get me wrong, but as someone who grew up on the original Kiss, it was a little bit of a bummer that I wasn't seeing the original four. But I got over it pretty quickly. Because like you said, here's the guys that, I had their posters on my wall. I had their records. I had the cassette tapes. Back then, you only read about bands in magazines. You didn't have MTV. You didn't have the internet. So they were otherworldly, and Kiss even more so than most bands because of the whole makeup and the costumes and the personas and whatever. They really were like superheroes. And the fact that you didn't have this 24-hour access to them made it really special to be in the arena. Because like you, I'm looking at the stage, and I'm looking at Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, and I'm like, oh my God, there they are. They're actual living, breathing human beings. They're right there in front of me, standing on that stage, playing the songs that I grew up with and loved. And I just couldn't believe that I was witnessing it and hearing it with my ears. The funny thing about that show is this was in San Antonio, by the way, where I grew up. And the opening act was supposed to be Riot. And so I was really excited. Not only am I going to see my childhood heroes Kiss, but the band that's going to warm things up for me is Riot. And so I'm stoked, right? And as it gets closer to concert day, there's an announcement on the radio that Riot is off the bill and they're being replaced by, drum roll please, the Plasmatics.
Yeah, that's quite a change up.
I'm like,
between
what?
From Riot to Plasmatics.
Yeah. Now, you have to keep this in context because it's 1983. I'm 16 years old. This is a time when the headbangers and the punk rockers didn't coexist like they do today, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So I'm kind of bummed out that Riot is no longer on the bill, and instead I'm going to see this chick with a mohawk. And I don't care anything about punk rock at that time, so I'm really disappointed. And so, I'll get to the arena. It's like, okay, look around at the merch booth, buy a T-shirt, go into the arena, and I'm very skeptical. I'm very pessimistic about the opening act, right? And out come the Plasmatics. And man, you talk about mind blown.
Yes.
Before my mind was blown by Kiss. So technically speaking, the first live band I ever saw officially was the Plasmatics. And as you know, I went on to have a great appreciation for punk rock and that sort of thing. But even that night, having no not looking forward in the least to seeing the Plasmatics, I was blown away. They come out. Wendy O. Williams, of course, is, barely dressed. She's got this mohawk. She's chainsawing guitars. She's smashing televisions with a sledgehammer. The band is all wacky looking. They were great. She was going up and down on this cherry picker kind of apparatus thing. And it was mind blowing, man. And it's like I was destroyed.
They're a perfect band to open for Kiss when you really think about it. When you were just describing the Plasmatics and Wendy O, you could insert Nasty Ronnie and Nasty Savage because they're exactly like that, smashing
Yeah.
things and just, I mean, it's mayhemic. Their
Yeah.
show
Total.
around that same time, just like a year later, 2 years later, at the Ritz Theater, San Antonio cameo, from Florida, Nasty Savage. So it's kind of like this, and I don't mean to take any time away because I want to hear you talk about Plasmatics one more time, but I'm telling you, you witnessed one of the earliest versions of crossover.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very physical presentation or performance. Just I mean, I was destroyed before Kiss came out to destroy me. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
It was like I was just a puddle of goo. Just I couldn't believe what I just witnessed, and Kiss hadn't even come on yet. So of course, I'm stoked for Kiss, but I got to give it to the Plasmatics. They blew my mind. They came out, they were fantastic, and then Kiss comes on, and they were great. I've always thought Creatures of the Night is one of their better albums. It was definitely a comeback for that time frame in their career, and I got to see Vinnie Vincent and Eric Carr with the makeup. The drum riser was a big tank, and they had kind of reverted back to a more menacing look after some of the really glammy stuff from like Dynasty and The Elder and Unmasked and all that stuff. They were back to being sinister and black and
Yeah.
silver and heavy metal.
They were creeping and stuff.
Yeah. And so you were talking about getting dropped off by your parents or your friend's parents or something at the concert. So the condition was for me that I could go to this concert if, number one, I earned the money to buy my own ticket, and number two, I had to go with my buddy's mom. So we had a chaperone. But of course,
Awesome.
I was like, hey, whatever it takes, I got to go. I got to see this. And so it was two of my friends, and we ended up, trying our best to ditch mom and go hang out with the cool kids during the concert. And we were successful to a degree. But yeah, anyway, first concert, Kiss with the Plasmatics. I think the ticket stub says $12.75 or something like that. I'll never forget it, obviously.
They had like 3 records out. Metal Priestess was 81.
What's the first one called?
The first one is New Hope for the Wretched.
That's what I'm trying to think of.
And that needs to be in our next show because it came out in the year that we want it to.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put that down real quick.
That'll make sense to those who listen to every episode. That'll come back and make sense in a little while.
That's going to come back and bite everybody. And then they had Beyond the Valley of 1984, and that came out in 81.
Well, the other thing is...
so they were touring Coup d'etat is what they were touring.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, later on it kind of made sense because I learned that there was a connection between Wendy O. Williams and Gene Simmons. I think he produced her first couple of solo albums or something like that. So it wasn't as far-fetched as it seemed when I first heard the announcement that the Plasmatics were taking the place of Riot and opening for Kiss. But of course, I wasn't aware of all that stuff at that time. I was just some teenage kid that wanted to see heavy metal and not punk rock. But I was quickly converted.
Well,
warped.
I think that the most relevant thing about that sort of aha moment that you had by that little switcheroo in the support act is the fact in most support acts they only get about 25 minutes anyway. They probably played 7 songs tops, 6 songs.
Yeah. It destroyed 5 televisions and chainsaw 2 guitars.
Yeah, 20 minutes of chainsaw and jumping around and rolling around and spitting and whatever else they did because
antagonizing the crowd.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I think that people realizing that this is not the Mamas and the Papas. This is not the Beach Boys. This
No, it
is
was
like
not.
this is as good as it gets with New York punk rock mixed with what heavy metal will soon become.
Yeah.
Because heavy metal, I feel like, was still kind of a fairly new moniker, like as far as a box to put a style of music in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, you're starting to hear that term, like, I guess around the late 70s. But in hindsight, you look back at, probably with the exception of Black Sabbath, but you look at Aerosmith and Ted Nugent and Bob Seger and stuff like that. I don't consider that heavy metal. That's hard rock. And
Yeah.
then by the 80s or whatever, it started to get heavy, accepting Black Sabbath, of course. But
Well,
and Judas Priest was back there too, but
it
I
started
know
to
what you
fit
mean.
it started to fit that color. It started to fit that name a little bit more as I even think the bands decided that they were a heavy metal band. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think AC/DC came out and said, we're a heavy metal band. I don't
No.
think Ted Nugent and Thin Lizzy came out, or UFO, we're a heavy metal. They didn't know one. It was, I think it was a thing that if you were dangerous enough, you might have been lumped in with some heavy metal bands, but that didn't make you a heavy metal band. Like,
Yeah.
I think that the Plasmatics were a crossover between punk and metal because of the attitude, the lyrical content, the names of their records read like names of horror movies or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like apocalyptic raids, like
Yeah.
things like that,
Yeah.
uh, which is very metal and very sort of uh, before the point. And that's what I mean. It's like the Sex Pistols. That, never mind the Bollocks, to me is like a great hard rock album that has a different take on vocals, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just kind of like nasty and snotty, but
Totally.
it's not real fast or anything, and it's just they're trying to get you to go, whoa. They're trying to get you to they want you to react and listen to the crazy things he's singing about.
Yeah.
What's the difference between that and Plasmatics? Probably nothing.
Well, for a band that I didn't want to see, I now brag about it. It's a badge of honor to say that the
As you
first live band I ever saw was the
and your
Plasmatics.
first concert was a Kiss concert, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't do that. And it was before, I mean, it was a year later or something. They took the makeup off.
Yeah. Yeah. So I caught them at a good time. Uh, yeah, and with the Plasmatics. So can't beat that. So
Bonnet.
take us to your second concert. What was the second show you went to?
My second concert was also my third concert. My second concert was Ted Nugent, and
Uh,
it was the support act was Angel, and Angel was on
Angel.
Kiss's record label Casablanca,
Yes, yes, yes.
and we could do a whole show on Casablanca too.
Yeah.
Um,
So you got to see Angel. That's
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah. Ted was touring. It was in let's see. He was touring. I have it here. Yeah, it was 78. So it was just a few months after I saw Rush in 77. I think that the Rush and UFO gig I saw was like October of 77. Because I
Yeah.
do recall the Nugent show was just a few months later. And he was supporting Weekend Warriors.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Great album cover.
Yeah, great album cover.
Yeah.
They made that cover into a pinball machine. I wish I had that. That
Oh,
would be
yeah, that's right.
awesome. Yeah, Tom Werman produced that, and he's produced Junkyard and Motley Crue and Kicks and keep on going, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The interesting thing is now that I don't even know that I that I would have known any difference, but in 78 and probably even a couple of years before that, Ted Nugent had already been established. He had Stranglehold and all this. He had Double Live Gonzo. He had Free for All. Meatloaf actually sang a bunch of songs on Free for All. And on the first record, he had Derek St. Holmes. And so that's Derek St. Holmes singing. I think Derek also sang a couple things on Free for All, if I'm not mistaken. But Derek St. Holmes is the voice of Ted Nugent.
Right.
And just real quick to make, when you hear Stranglehold, that's Derek St. Holmes.
Yeah.
When you hear Snakeskin Cowboy, that's Derek St. Holmes. So all of these, it's, and then Cat Scratch Fever, of course, that's Ted Nugent singing. So Ted sang some songs, and he had this guy, Charlie Hoon. I think I'm saying that name right. Huhn. Charlie Hoon, I think is how you say that. No Derek St. Holmes on this tour. Like I said, back then I was so young, I wasn't realizing that that's not Derek St. Holmes, and I may have not even made the connection from, Double Live Gonzo, which I had, and I had in Warriors 2, which would have been the new record that I'm saying, oh, this is not Derek St. Holmes. I don't even know if I ever made that connection, but he was great. I think he shot arrows and wore a loincloth and moccasin boots and swung out on a rope like Tarzan and all that stuff. And my mind was blown again. And he was more of like, a sort of a screaming demon style of rock, amped up Chuck Berry licks. When you think about Ted Nugent, it's very rock and roll what he does.
Yeah.
And very 50s style of playing, and but it's just like feedback and fire.
Yeah. He's like a caveman Chuck Berry.
Yeah, exactly. From the jungle, you know what I mean? Just crazy.
Yeah. Arrived on stage fresh from the jungle.
Yeah. I think he shot, arrows into his amps or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was nuts. But Angel, the support, I had one of their albums, and it was the album from that they were supporting. It was called White Hot. And Angel, people who know about them know that they were on Casablanca, and that their logo is probably the coolest logo ever.
Yeah.
It's the logo. I forget what you call that, but if you turn it upside down, it's the same thing side up.
Right. It reads the same way.
Yeah. And I used to draw that logo all over my books and folders at school. That along with Kiss, because let's face it, they had the coolest logos when you think Kiss and Angel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Angel, the lights go out and white fog, you're just drowning in it. And I wasn't on the floor again. I was, I had my own seat in there by now. Same venue that I saw Russian UFO, Corpus Christi Coliseum.
Yeah.
Probably only holds about 3,000 people or less. I'm in the back somewhere. So fog just engulfs the stage. And there's keyboard, like intro tape kind of crap, but it's Greg Giuffria. It's the keyboard player running, he's basically set a brick on top of his, it's just destroying the venue through the PA, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like a spaceship is landing or something, right? And all this, and there's purple and blue lights, just you can imagine. And then the fog just all of a sudden gets sucked off the stage, and they're standing there like they appeared from nowhere, like a Houdini trick.
Awesome.
And then the the drummer Barry Brandt just goes, and they go. I think they opened with Tower which was on a previous record, I think. A lot of people, I think Joe Anthony used to play Tower on
Yeah, sure did.
99.5 Kiss on Joe Anthony in concert. Everybody around here knows that song.
Yep.
I got to see some local bands down in Corpus actually cover that, I believe, when I was a child. Anyway, so it was my second concert was a success. I concur that it was a success. I may have gotten a ride with my friend's older brother or something. I don't remember my parents having anything to do with it this time.
Yeah.
I had garnered trust, and once again, religious experience. By this time, it's like I know. What do you want to do with your life? I want to rock. And it was gonna happen, and I knew it. By that time, I had my first, or it was right after that I got my first bass guitar, and there's some history right there. So, what about you? What's your second magnum?
My second concert to this day remains probably one of the best triple bills I've ever seen. And of course, now I've been to hundreds of concerts. I can't even list them all. But my second concert still stands as one of the best, and that was Iron Maiden on the Peace of Mind tour. The opening acts were Saxon and Fastway.
I was there. Yes.
Yeah, that was a good one. Iron Maiden on Peace of Mind. Saxon is supporting Power and the Glory, and Fastway was debuting their self-titled album. I was a Maiden freak at that point, so I hadn't been able to see them up until that time. But Peace of Mind, of course, was just a fantastic album.
What's the time frame? 85?
No, this is like 83 is again.
Still in 83.
Still in 83.
Right.
Yeah. And I believe that ticket probably also cost me $12 or $13 to see all three of those great bands. So by then, I'm a huge Iron Maiden fan. They're probably my favorite band at that point in time. And Saxon.
You and everybody else.
Yeah, right.
That we knew, right.
Yeah, exactly. They kind of unseated Kiss and actually unseated maybe AC/DC and Van Halen. They were one of those bands that I graduated to as I was seeking out something heavier and nastier and faster and meaner and scarier and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And Iron Maiden had it all, of course. So Maiden is doing the Peace of Mind record. Saxon's doing Power and the Glory, which to this day is still my favorite Saxon album. And Fastway is doing their self-titled, the famous album with the checkerboard cover. And
yes. Say What You Will.
Say What You Will is on that. Yes, that's right.
I believe they did the soundtrack for Trick or Treat that same year or the next year, like a year later.
I think they did it the next year, but you're right, they're on that soundtrack. But again, mind blown. Of course, Maiden is starting to get into the point where they're spending a lot of money and time on production. So they're at a point in their career where that is starting to be a really dominant part of their stage show. So of course you've got the 10-foot Eddie that comes out 10 or 12 feet tall, and a Peace of Mind, of course, he's in the straitjacket and has his head shaved like he's just had a lobotomy and everything. And the music alone would have been worth the price of admission to me because I was just a huge Iron Maiden fan. But much like Kiss, my first concert, here's Iron Maiden, my second concert, and they're doing the whole stage show and the Eddie and the lights and the fire, and it was amazing. And Saxon was fantastic as well. And I remember I've got this memory sort of burned in my brain, and of course, perspective is everything, right? But at the time, I remember being in my seat. I was probably in mezzanine, and I remember Graham Oliver, one of the guitar players for
Yeah,
Saxon.
I was gonna say real quick, hold the thought. You saw pretty much the original band, other than the addition of Nigel.
Right. This is
Steve Dawson on bass.
Dawson on bass, Graham Oliver, Paul Quinn, and the newcomer Nigel Glockler on drums, who
had been there since Denim and Leather.
he did the Denim and Leather tour, not the album.
Not
He
the record.
replaced Pete Gill.
Uh,
But
I saw them in '82, and it was Nigel's first tour of America.
yeah, he's on the Eagle Has Landed album,
Yes.
but that's a live album. So Power and the Glory was his first studio album with the band. But I remember Graham Oliver stepping up to the edge of the stage during a guitar solo, and a flash pot went off. And from my perspective, it looked like he stepped right into the flash pot. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, did I just see that guy almost go up in flames? And he was fine, never missed a note and carried on just fine. But for some reason, that memory's burned in my brain. And again, it's probably perspective. I'm a young kid. This is only my second concert. And from my vantage point, it looked like a mishap of some sort. Like he stepped right into this, explosion. And then the smoke cleared and he's still wailing away on the guitar and he's fine. But
scared you before it scared you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It probably did. You're exactly right. It scared me more than it scared him, I'm sure. But yeah, that was a great show. And like I said, to this day, where are we? 40 years later or something like that. I can still say that's probably one of the best triple bills I've ever seen. All three of those bands were at the peak of their power, and to have them all on the same stage on the same night was just amazing for a metalhead like me. So
yeah, I remember that show very, very well. Me and a couple of friends driving down to San Antonio, which was always a big deal. All right, we're going to San Antonio to see Iron Maiden and Saxon. Whoa,
Yeah.
I saw a lot of shows in that old Hemisphere arena, and one of them I saw around that same time was the Scorpions with it might have been Blackout.
Yep. It was Scorpions with Iron Maiden and Girl School.
That's right. That's exactly
I
right.
remember because I was so jealous that I wasn't going. And Iron Maiden was touring the Number of the Beast on that that tour.
Yeah. So the subsequent one back-to-back Iron Maiden shows with unbelievable like legendary bands. I mean, Fastway being Fast Eddie from Motorhead's band on a Bill Saxon. You're talking and Iron Maiden. That's a king's court of the new wave of British heavy metal.
Yeah, exactly.
And Iron Maiden with Scorpions on Number of the Beast tour. That's like at that time that was the chalice.
Pinnacle.
That was your cup is full.
Yeah.
In Girl School, there's part of the new wave of British heavy metal thing again.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's unbelievable.
And I got to say, before we move on, I got to say that Dave King, the singer from Fastway, was dynamite, man. I mean, he was awesome.
Only like 18 years old or something.
Yeah, he was like a kid, and he totally reminded me of Robert Plant. He looked like Robert Plant. He was all over the stage. He sang great. So I was really impressed with him. Like he came out like he had something to prove, and he just blew us all away. So, yeah, Dave King, good on you, man.
Interesting. Yeah, he's badass. It's interesting that in today's world, he is the everyone knows him as Flogging Molly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Or
whole
they
different
don't
style.
know. They know him from Flogging Molly, and they have no idea that's him. On classic rock radio singing Say What You Will, like Robert Plant or something.
That's probably more accurate. Our age group knows him. We know him as Fastway.
Right. Yeah, their tails were heads.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So take us to your third concert. What was number 3?
Concert, some people might think that your concerts are better than mine. Like your
Well,
first 2 or 3 concerts might be better than mine. I'm seeing Ted Nugent at my 3rd concert. I had just seen Ted Nugent.
okay.
I may have seen Triumph as my 3rd concert,
All right.
but
Yeah.
I don't have much memory of it, and I don't know why. I'm still young. I'm still really young. I'm 13 years old or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know I saw Triumph, but I can't remember if I saw them between my Nugent, if they were the sandwich,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't remember an opening act when I saw Triumph, but I saw Triumph. And I don't remember what record they were touring or anything like that, but it would have been in 78.
All right.
So I don't
So,
know. I
but
don't know if it was just a game. I don't know if it was, I don't know.
but to the best of your recollection, your 3rd concert was Ted Nugent again.
For sure. And
Same tour or a new?
sticking by that. This was a new tour. It was
Okay.
State of Shock.
State of Shock. Okay.
State of Shock, and it would have been 79. So it's a handful of months later. The song I remember the most off that record was Paralyzed.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
That's another great album cover,
Yeah,
by the way.
it is. It is a fun record.
State of Shock is a classic photo of Ted live on stage, and there's kind of like the electric lightning bolts coming off his fingers.
Okay, right.
Yeah, yeah.
I wish I still had those records. I think I have Weekend Warriors on CD. Right, I have the first Nugent record on vinyl. Of course, I have Double Live Gonzo. Probably multiple copies of Double Live Gonzo. But
I need one.
I'll see what I can do. So, State of Shock. I mean, it's pretty mind blowing that it's just this one breath of air, and Ted Nugent is already back down there in Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
And I swear both of those records were recorded at the same studio. I think they were recorded at Criteria in Miami. And I think they were recorded back to back, kind of like load and reload, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's just how they did it.
Yeah.
That's just how bands did it.
Bands put out 2 albums a year back then.
Yeah. You made a record and you toured it, and then you made another one and you toured it, and it was still you were still within the same
calendar year. Yeah. Exactly.
The opening band, Nugent was, he didn't have any additional stage show things going on. It was still loincloth,
arrows,
Indian boots, and arrows, and screaming in the mic. Still had Charlie Hoon on vocals, and they were great.
Yeah.
They were fun. They were wild. I can see it like it was yesterday, but I feel like it was just one long concert because I did see him. Pretty much the same year back to back. Anyway, the singles were different. That's about it.
Yeah.
The opening band was not. It was my first experience of having a support act not impress me as much as I want. It's my first going. Why am I not feeling this religious experience? Why am I not having an outer body moment? Why am I not tearing up during this act? Why am I not having the same rock and roll, heavenly, magical moment?
Right.
And here's why. I'll tell you. I want to say they opened with, Motown, sugar pie, honey bun, sugar. I don't know. They were playing that kind of stuff. They played like a few covers. I don't know if they actually had like a covers album out. I didn't know much about Axe before.
Axe.
It's Axe. Sorry.
Okay.
Axe. It's Axe.
Rock and Roll Party in the Street.
Yeah, but this is before they went biker metal. The rock and roll where they're wearing leather and headbands and Harley Davidsons and rock and roll party in the street. Let's have a knockdown, drag out.
Yeah.
That was kind of fun.
Yeah, that was great.
This was not that. And that would have been 3 years later or something that they were doing that kind of a thing. And,
Okay.
I wanted Axe to be more like what the name of the band is. I don't know, some kind of barbarians coming out doing something.
Yeah,
Opening
some
for
Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah,
type.
opening for the Wild Man. I knew nothing about Axe, and these guys come out in, check this, powder blue tuxedos, and they play Sugar Pie Honey Bun.
Ooh,
And
man.
I was just like, it was, I think that was when the fire in me realized that, man, it has to be dangerous for me to
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah,
And
so,
you're
right. So how old are you at this time?
13.
Yeah, so something like that, you could kind of appreciate the older you get. But when you're 13 years old waiting for Ted Nugent, you do not want to see powder blue tuxedos and Motown songs.
Well, I didn't have enough piss and vinegar in me at that point in my life, I guess, to get irate. I was confused. I went cross-eyed. I was just like,
Yeah, what do I make of this?
what? I guess this is intermission. You know, I just got here, but
Are these guys going to
I,
sell me a hot dog or
yeah,
what?
well, no, I guess this is time. This is a piss break. You know, I don't really need to stick around for too much of these or pay much attention. I didn't know what to do with myself for the first time at a rock concert. And it's only my third concert or fourth concert at this point, as memory would have it. But
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't really have much to take away from Axe. And so I was actually surprised when I heard the knockdown, drag out rock and roll party in the streets where there's, smoke and fire and crazy long hair and, biker metal is what
Yeah.
I called them after that.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
felt like they shoulda, coulda, would have been lumped in with, and I'm not sure where Axe is from either. They might be Canadian.
They're from Florida.
Are they from Florida? Okay, so
Yeah.
they do fit in with the Molly Hatchets.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, well
yeah.
maybe the
Yes,
subsidiary of Molly Hatchet being Axe Hatchet.
yeah.
Yeah.
I could see the I could see the similarities. Yeah, yeah.
Well, later on, anyway, it was a little bit confusing. What about you?
Um,
I guess
my
this would be number 3 for you.
yeah, my third concert, memorable for a couple reasons. It was actually Judas Priest on the Defenders of the Faith tour, and this would have been 1984.
Yep.
And my first time
San
seeing
Antonio?
San Antonio
Yeah.
Hemisphere Arena, Judas Priest Defenders of the Faith tour. It was my first time seeing Judas Priest. Again, they were supporting a great album, and the opening act was a barely known band called Great White,
Mm-hmm.
and they
I saw
were
this same concert in Austin.
yeah.
Hmm?
Great White was supporting their debut album, the one with the all black cover.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Anthony, of course, the DJ from San Antonio, had been playing them on the radio. So I was familiar with, I believe the single was called Stick It.
Yep.
And they did a cover of that Who's song Substitute.
Yep.
And there was another song on there called Out of the Night that I still love. So it's a solid debut album. And they were great on stage.
They had another song on there with double kick that I liked, Dugga Dugga, called On Your Knees.
Yes, On Your Knees. Is there a song on there called Street Killer?
Yeah.
I think,
You're
yeah.
right.
I mean, that's a solid record, man.
Yeah. That's a great debut record for a once again, here I am sort of like, I mean, are they a heavy metal band? Because when you say Great White, you don't really think heavy metal.
Right.
But that first record is pretty much a heavy metal record.
It's pretty banging, yeah.
As far as like classic heavy metal goes, like early metal,
Yeah. Well, the thing I remember besides them being great is
no pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
They had a drummer who I believe his name was Gary Holland. And I remember watching him, and he was like not a flashy drummer, but kind of a tall, lanky dude with super long hair. And he was just like all these, his arms and his hair and all these limbs were just flying around behind the kit. And I remember paying probably more attention to him than the rest of the band that was up at the front of the stage. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, I'm focused on the drummer. I don't know that this has ever happened before.
Yeah.
And with Saxon and Iron Maiden, I was looking at the drummers, but they were kind of buried behind huge, massive drum kits. And Gary Holland had a more sparse kit, so he was more visible. And he's the opening band, so he's kind of pushed to the front of the stage. He's just more visible, right?
They were a four-piece band too. There wasn't a keyboard on stage.
Not at that time, no.
Oh.
And so I remember Great White was fantastic. Gary Holland impressed me on the drums. And then Judas Priest came out, and I'd never seen him before. So it's the whole leather and spikes for the first time. It's all the classic hit songs for the first time. It's Rob Halford's vocals for the first time in my face and in my ears. And, it was like you've said, almost like this mind-blowing experience. I couldn't believe that it was right there in front of me, happening right in front of my eyes and ears. And so here's the sidebar of that concert. I actually took my sister with me. So she's a year and a half younger than I am. So let's put this back into context. I've already been to 2 arena concerts, right? And I come home and I tell her that, oh my God, this concerts are the greatest thing ever. Next time you need to go with me, I'm going to take you. You have to see this. You have to hear this. You have to smell this. It's like, it's just the greatest thing ever. So I convinced her to go with me, and she was somewhat familiar with Judas Priest. She wasn't nearly the heavy metal maniac, fanatic nerd that I was and am, but she was familiar enough to be somewhat interested, especially after my sales pitch, right? Yeah. So I think we full confession here. I think we lied to my parents and told them that we were spending the night at our respective friend's house. She was spending the night at somewhere, and I was hanging out with one of my buddies or whatever. And that was our game plan. And we snuck off to the arena, and I took her to see Judas Priest. Sorry, Mom. And
I'm sure she's fine with it now.
Yeah, we turned out okay.
Yeah, you're good now.
But that was the other reason that concert was memorable. Besides being, everything I could have wanted in a heavy metal show, hard rock concert, I took my sister, and she was glad she went, and I think she enjoyed the experience, but she didn't become a lifer. It didn't change her life like it changed mine. And some of that might have just been the genre, maybe, because I know
like what you're getting out of the fellowship. She didn't understand the fellowship.
Yeah,
like
and
you feel like you're with your people, and
yeah,
this, like a celebration. It's like, that's why I keep calling it church.
Yeah,
you're here for the sermon. You know what I mean? And
you're enjoying the community of your people.
And that's part of what it's about. And you've been trying to sell it to her, and she was like, I don't get it.
Right. It's like, these people smell.
Yeah. Or whatever else she could have said about them, probably without not trying to hurt anyone's feelings.
Yeah. But that was my little adventure with Judas Priest. That was my 3rd concert. I took my sister. I had a great time. I think she enjoyed the experience, and she was glad she went, but she wasn't begging me to go to the next concert. So we'll leave it at that. But yeah, Judas Priest, Defenders of the Faith, and Great White. And again, this was 1984, and I probably paid, $13 for that ticket or something like that. Dirt cheap.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. Let's move into our next segment. Jason, time for Shot of Rock and Roll. My shot of rock and roll for you this episode is, I think it's I'm going to go out on a limb here and just say let me just say it may be safe to assume that between the two of us, I'm probably more of the punk rock guy. But I want to know what your favorite punk rock band is.
I actually have two favorite. Well, I technically I could say three, but I can't just, if I have to pick one, it would probably be Fear.
Oh, nice.
Um, I Fear the record came out in 1980. The importance of 1980 is ever so growing.
You're foreshadowing.
Yes. But I'm pretty sure that came out in 80. The tie with that I can argue valid argument is Group Sex by the Circle Jerks.
Circle Jerks, yeah.
Those two records kind of like supercharged me in a lot of different ways. My younger brother Randy, who's like a punk rock underground god in parts.
Yeah.
He's the most unknown, well-known hardcore singer in central South Texas.
Right.
I want to say it was like just some like ripped cassette tapes that he brought home, like in 1980, or something.
Yeah.
At him and his friends at school. And he was playing it, and I freaked out. What is this? Oh my God, this is insane. Because it was like when you think 1980, you don't say the word speed metal.
Not yet.
This was the earliest version of what I would call speed metal, where the drums and the guitars are just ripping fast.
Yeah.
And the chokes and the grabs and the pauses are all precise and super tight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers plays bass on the record, on Fear the Record. It's called Fear the Record.
Is he on the album?
I thought he played bass on that record.
I know he was in the band. I didn't know if he recorded with them or not, but
I think he played bass on that. And anyway, it's pretty unbelievable how that kind of changed my brain enough to be prepared for what would come down the heavy metal pipe.
Right.
But my oldest brother Mitch in the 70s, right around the time that I was in huge Kiss worship, close to the end of the 70s, he was, for years at that point, he had been, Beatles and Stones. I might have still been in diapers or something. And so I was hearing that around the house all the time. And like, I'm just so young, and I'm going, wow, this is awesome. My brother Mitch had hair down to his ass, and he was, hippie child kind of thing, and just rock and roll. He was, he knew what was up. But he's the guy that was bringing home like the first Devo record, the first Ramones record, the first Sex Pistols record, the first, you know what I mean? So when I think of my brother Mitch as an influence, and he is still a huge influence.
Wow.
Beatles, Stones, Pistols, Ramones is a mantra that I say all the time, because there's not much more genesis to that.
Yeah.
As far as what we're doing here, what I'm doing here. And, but I got to say, just to answer your question flat out, I love Bullocks, and I love the record, and I love Group Sex.
Wow. That's cool.
That's a lot of punk rock for one person to soak up. And, that's only about 45 minutes worth of music.
Right. but it's
30
about
albums and
150 songs.
yeah, those records are like 20 minutes long or something like that. You know,
Yeah.
it might be looking at an hour. I doubt it though.
Yeah.
So
I remember reading something about the Ramones one time, and somebody it was almost a critique of some sort where uh, some guy, I don't know if he was a club owner or a booker or a record label dude or whatever, he walked into an audition and he said they were so bad he was going to get up and leave, but they were finished before he could stand up.
oh yeah, songs were so fast that
Yeah.
they were starting another one by the time. Right.
Well, cool,
Here's
cool.
a side thing real quick, and I thought this was kind of cool and kind of nerdy. It excites my heavy metal and hard rock and roll brain. That first Fear record, I'm not sure where the Circle Jerks Group Sex record was recorded, but I know that Fear, the record, was recorded at Sound City, and the engineer, Bruce, I want to say his name was Bruce Barris or something like that. My band Dangerous Toys recorded our first record at Sound City,
Right.
and Bruce Barris was the second engineer, was the house engineer on Fear the
Wow.
record in the first Toys. I'm sure he worked on 1,000 records out
Right,
of
right.
Sound City, but yeah.
Oh, that's a cool connection.
Yeah, it's a very strange, and we're talking a decade later.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess he was like furniture. Bruce was furniture around Sound City. A lot of things were probably still furniture around Sound City for
Right,
even
right.
another decade.
Right, right.
But anyway, just thought that was kind of a cool.
No, that is cool. That is cool.
Well, I got a shot of rock and roll for you too.
Go for it.
Now, this is kind of this could be just as easy for you to answer as it was for me to pick one punk record. What is your favorite Alice Cooper record?
Oh, God.
Yeah. Good luck. 10 seconds on the clock.
Yeah. Great question. Okay. So
you're struggling.
I'm struggling for obvious reasons. So I will say the very first Alice Cooper record I ever bought was Welcome to My Nightmare. So that album has some sentimental value to me. It was kind of my gateway to Alice Cooper. But then, of course, you backtrack, right? And Alice's, those first, 4 or 5 albums are just, well, let's say pick it up from Love It to Death and then move forward. The first 2 albums were a little too weird for me, but Love It to Death.
That was kind of the point, though.
What's that?
That was kind of the point.
Yeah. But I mean, they really found their sound, what became the classic Alice Cooper sound on the Love It to Death record. And
definitely.
So, oh man, I mean, Killer is great. $1 Billion Babies is great. School's Out is great. I mean, all of all the albums where they were billed as the Alice Cooper band versus Alice Cooper, the solo artist, those, you can't go wrong with any of them, right?
Right.
And there's a handful of Alice Cooper solo records that are really, really great as well. But to answer your question, as tough as this is, it's probably a toss-up between Killer and Love It to Death, and I'm going to go with Love It to Death.
Wow.
I'm going to do that on the strength of the song Ballad of Dwight Fry, because I think that song is a masterpiece.
Yes. Is that Bob Ezrin on the first album?
Bob Ezrin on Love It to Death?
Might not be Bob Ezrin yet.
Bob Ezrin.
Because when you think of Ballad of Dwight Fry, that sounds like it could be a Bob Ezrin.
It does sound like
operatic building of emotional He was really good at that.
Yeah.
Orchestrating a rock band.
That's a great point. I don't know off the top of my head, and I probably should, but that's not a bad guess. And you're right. That song is so orchestrated and so interesting that it does sound like somebody like Bob Ezrin would have a hand in it.
It's like you're watching a movie.
Yeah.
That song is like you're watching a film.
Yeah. That's a great album. And so, I could live happily with any of the first 4 or 5 Alice Cooper Band records gladly.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to pick one today in order to answer your question, I'm going with Love It to Death.
Well, you went all the way back to 1971 when all of this kind of stuff was really just starting to grow legs. The first Black Sabbath was 70, 71, 70, I think.
69.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of things happening right there. And like you said, Alice already had Pretties for You and Easy Action out. So all of these things that we love about what we do here at Talk Louder were starting to happen. As Biff said, where were you in 79?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Jason, let's wrap this one up. We've got much more to talk about in the future, and we'll save it for a future episode. But we're going to call it quits for today. On behalf of myself, Metal Dave, and my co-host, Jason McMaster, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast.